Good day, viewers. Walter here. I thought I'd continue with another series, with another episode of my series, The Life of a Railway Carman. Today we're talking about John Clark. I'll show you some photos as we go along, or I'll insert them in my video program here. In the image, you'll see John Clark is kneeling, bottom left corner. I'm the one kneeling on his left. Behind him is B.G. Brown. He was the other carman that stayed with us. He passed away a few years back. I remember a couple of those guys' names. The one on my left his name was Bill Hales. He lasted about 2 weeks with the railroad and quit. The one behind him is the one that I mentioned later in this story about getting welding burn in his eyes. I don't remember his name. And let's see, Williams. He's not in this picture. Williams is there, but I haven't got the picture in front of me. Anyway, here we go. In my 34-year career with the railroad, I encountered many colorful old men, railroaders, you might say, many of whom merit mention. If you look at this picture of my Carman class taken when I attended Carman School at Southern Tech, prior to coming to active work with Southern Railway, you will see the old man kneeling next to me on the front row. He was the very first of a colorful old railroaders that I encountered during my career, and there were many of them. This story is what I remember about him. His name was John Clark. He was retired general foreman with the railroad and was from somewhere up in Tennessee or Kentucky, somewhere up there in one of them hillbilly countries. He drove a beat-up old pickup truck. As I recall, it was black. It was a real raggedy-looking truck. He was perhaps 5'6" tall and bowed over with age. He swore, a.k.a. cussed, quite a lot, and was quick to express his opinion when we said or did something he didn't like. I won't repeat the expletives he used when he spoke, but you can imagine what they may have been. As I quote some things he had to say, he had a very intimidating way about him, and most of the guys disliked him. I was 23 years old, fresh out of the Navy. In fact, you can notice my Navy shoes are still on my feet in this photograph, and was quite accustomed to that type of language. The Navy, and was quite accustomed to the type of language he used. But like everyone else, I also was a little intimidated by him. When I looked at him, I just saw a grumpy old man. He taught us mainly from the AAR field manual, and most of that was just stuff he wanted us to memorize. I recall one day in class he said something about the Union, as I had never heard of being in a Union and was naturally curious. I had touched on a sensitive subject with him, as he was an ex-company man and violently anti-union. The rest of that class was spent listening to him expressing his displeasures of unions. I learned quickly not to mention the subject again, and turned out I later learned that the railroad is a closed shop, and you don't get a choice. You must join the union, or you will be dismissed from working there. During the 3 months we attended the school, the railroad put us up in a motel in Marietta, Georgia. The rooms they put us in had 2 bedrooms, so 2 men were assigned to each room. We shared a living room and a kitchen. One day my roommate stayed home because he had flash burn in both eyes from welding. Mr. Clark called the roll and asked where the guy was, and I told him he had burned his eyes. If you don't know what flash burn is, any man who has ever done much welding can tell you it can be quite painful. I've had it many times over the years, sometimes worse than others. Never look at welding rays when someone is arc welding. It can cause permanent eye damage, and the damage will accumulate. Probably why I'm half blind now. The old man went to the motel to check on him and was quite displeased to find that he had used his flash burn time off to invite a woman over for the day. He returned to class and told us apparently the guy's burns were not too bad to interfere with his sex life. The guy almost lost his job that day. Just a footnote here, the guy was quite a cad, and I doubt he survived his job with the railroad or his marriage, because as I recall, he was married. During the final test we were given in the class, we were told to go out and inspect the boxcars we had at the school. The old man had created some defects. We were supposed to find them on our own. Several things like a knuckle pin missing, a loose bolt, or some parts missing. He had removed a wedge from the journal box that supports the weight of the car on top of the journal bearing. I don't recall now what all he had done for us to find, but I pretty much found it all. I thought to myself, let's liven this up a bit, and added some made-up defects to the list that were just total nonsense, like the horn don't work, the turn signal ain't working, and I found one real defect even the old man didn't catch. I added a sledgehammer hanging off the roof of the car just as a safety hazard. There really was a hammer. He had to go see for himself. He didn't take too kindly to my made-up defects and expressed his displeasure with my inspection. Now that I'm getting older, I tend to look at him in a different light. I didn't see the old man who had spent his whole life working on the railroad. A life on the railroad during the time when work there was very much harder than it is these days. I didn't see the man whose knowledge was vast compared to mine at the time. I really didn't see that he was just trying to teach us the best way he knew how. One thing is for sure, anyone he taught never forgot him. He's burned into each and every one of our memories. I was one of 5 men from that class who were destined to work in Atlanta. And of the 5, he made it quite plain that I was his least favorite. I seemed to agitate him tremendously. I think he thought I would not make it, but if he thought that, he was wrong. Only 2 of us stayed with the railroad, and I'm the only one left alive. He made sure that I started on the bottom of the seniority list at the railroad, so when I reflect on it now, I think I must have agitated him a lot. I recall once we were working on an old boxcar and I was trying to hold up a tie strap. A tie strap is slang for a heavy 3/4 inch steel plate, approximately 12 inches by 24 inches, and it bolts under the draft gear and keeps it inside the draft seal so the coupler can be attached to the rail car. I was straining to hold it up so the other guys could bolt it in place. The old man saw me straining, looking quite flustered, and he snapped at me with a flurry of expletives and said in a loud voice, so that everyone else could hear him, "Boy, get a bar and hold that thing up instead of standing there with your tongue hanging out like a red necktie." I recall thinking, how does he expect me to do that when it's obvious I have my hands full? Once I was burning plate steel with a cutting torch and let the hot slag burn a hole in the acetylene nose, which promptly caught on fire. The whole time I was running to the tanks to turn off the gas, he was right on my heels, snapping at me like Sergeant snapping at Gomer Pyle. Boy, what's the matter with you? Can't you see the blankety blank blank thing is on fire? I think teaching us by example was his way, so now I'm sure now he was yelling at me to benefit the rest of the class as to the dangers involved. I was just unfortunate enough to be the one under the gun that day, but at the time all I could see was a crazy old man. Once when I was working on the boxcar relining the inside with tongue and groove pine boards, I was handling boards up to the guys instead of so they could nail them in. The old man said, when y'all get this stuff picked up, you can quit for today. I probably started picking up boards in great numbers, thinking my day was about through. The old man saw me and called the whole class into a group and singled me out, put his hand on my shoulder, gave us an hour lecture. He called me up front and put his hand on my shoulder and said, I want y'all to look at this blankety blank. All day long he's been handing up boards one at a time, and when I say he can go home, he picks up the whole blankety blank pile and carries it off. I didn't get the object of the lesson unless he thought I was being lazy handing them up one at a time. But heck fire, they can only nail up one board at a time, I thought. My point is, we did learn stuff from him that stayed with us for the rest of our careers. So for that, I thank him. So John Clark, wherever you may be, in heaven or hell, I understand you much better today than I did then. Thanks, old man. The things I learned from you I used throughout my entire career. That's Pwalpar concluding today's vlog. I appreciate you listening to me. So I guess in a way, I sort of became one of those colorful old men.